everybody. Welcome back to Those Metal Dudes. There's another episode for you guys. We started on a different path for this episode. Initially, we had everything all planned out, and during the middle of us doing our research and background and listening to the music, unfortunately, that's when Ozzy Osbourne passed. So, called Eric, and we switched gears, and we decided that we would change what we were doing, the plans for this one, and this one we're going to dedicate strictly to Ozzy. So we've got a couple album reviews we're still doing, some debatable topics. We're going to talk about parts of his career and just make this a whole Ozzy episode. So, Eric, why don't you go ahead and get us started then?
All right. Well, first, let's show them what T-shirts we're wearing.
Don't we?
These are Black Sabbath Farewell Tour T-shirts. So we thought this would be appropriate.
We did. However, I try really hard to make sure we're not wearing the same shirts because we look like idiots as it is. We don't need any encouragement. So, unfortunately, we both only have one Black Sabbath shirt, and it's just this one. So, you didn't have to point that out, though.
Yeah. So on occasion, we're twins at concerts. So. Alrighty, so first we're going to talk about his career a little bit, and starting off with the early Black Sabbath years. Well, obviously, Ozzy was part of 1/4 of creating the heavy metal genre, and also the subgenre called doom metal. He was with Black Sabbath from August 1969 to April 1979 in the early years, and he recorded 8 studio albums with the band during those years. So they were actually pretty prolific.
Right on. Of course, as we all know, Ozzy couldn't just live life like the rest of us. He had to add a little excitement to everything. So, why not when you're going to go sign your contract back in 1981 when you decided to do your solo stuff that hey, get all up. Oh, I'm sorry. Get all wasted, and then you go ahead and grab a dove on the way in, bite its head off, spit it out, and as you have blood all over you, and you get escorted off the property, then you grab another one and do the same thing again. Sure, why not, right? And then let's not, so once that gets out and about, what happens? Well, have a concert, kid throws a bat up on stage, you're wasted again, think it's a rubber bat, so you pick it up and you decide to bite the head off of it. Well, guess what? It was real, and you ended up having to get rabies after that as well because the bat bit you back because it wasn't dead.
Well, I was thinking about that, and as gross as it sounds, so apparently somebody brought it in. Now, who brings in a real bat to a concert?
Well, after the dogs.
Yeah, and so basically, I guess like a few people in the front row were throwing rubber bats on stage. So it's like he thought that it was a rubber bat, but it was like sedated. And so then he bit it, but then he had to go get rabies shots afterwards. And so I'm thinking, when its head was in its mouth, did the bat bite the inside of its mouth? Is that why he had to go get rabies shots? Because I heard he
did get bit by the bat.
Yeah, so it must have like bit the inside of his mouth.
Or whatever.
So that's kind of gross.
Gross and fun times.
All right. Next was his infamous peeing on the Alamo in 1982, and he was banned from going to San Antonio for the next 10 years. And on his solo tour, where Motley Crue supported him in 1984, there's a couple interesting stories there. So that was a pretty wild tour. And so then I heard that, now I don't know who did what, but apparently Ozzy and the guys were walking out after a show, and there was a popsicle stick on the ground. And then, it was like melted popsicle was, on the ground. And so anyways, there was like a trail of ants going to the popsicle stick. So somebody, I don't know who it was, if it was Ozzy, got down and then snorted the line of ants.
Drugs and alcohol. Cocaine's a hell of a drug, right, Ozzy? Tell everybody. Unfortunately, things didn't just end like Ozzy and the craziness that went on. There was craziness outside of that in the 80s, especially with what was going on with all the different groups out there trying to protect children and from all the badness from heavy metal, and we know Judas Priest went through some stuff, and so Ozzy did as well. I mean, back in 1983, there was something about a guy named James Jalmore who ended up killing a lady and her daughters, and apparently that had to deal with Mark of the Moon. And then we all know about Suicide Solution and John McCallum when he killed himself, and that became a court issue again with music driving people to do things that they maybe wouldn't really do. Either way, bad stuff, but that's what happens when you're a popular person. You're doing a lot of crazy things and you're running around, and like you said, Judas Priest ran through the same thing. So it's kind of tough, but that's what the '80s. For those of you who don't know, go back and look. Twisted Sister, D. Schneider, he had a lot to say.
Those were wild times.
Yeah.
All right, so going on, continuing with Ozzy's career, few movies he was in. Trick or Treat in 1986, he had a bit part. Little Nicky, the Adam Sandler movie in 2000, he was in that. And also in Austin Powers Goldmember in 2002. I think the Osbourne's TV show was already going on, and so he actually had like a scene where him and the family were in there. The Osbourne's TV show on MTV from 2002 to 2005, 4 seasons, 52 episodes. The Ozfest years, those were those big tours where he had a ton of bands going through with him. From 1996 to 2018, the big tours ended in 2010, and then it turned into a 2 or 3 day festival after 2010. 13 was the last full Black Sabbath studio album released in 2013, but no Bill Ward on that album. The End is the last Black Sabbath album. It was an EP issued in 2016, and it was only sold on the farewell tour. Also, no Bill Ward on that album. Patient Number 9 is the last solo album that Ozzy released in 2022. There was like a lot of guest musicians on it. And so in total, he had 16 solo tours, not counting the Ozfest tours.
Yeah, so we've talked about a lot of things that Ozzy got into, and a lot of the exciting things can also be bad things, right? And that's what we've kind of highlighted to start out with, unfortunately. I mean, how many times do people run around saying, hey, I just signed my contract, and who remembers that? But go bite the head off a dove, and now you got a store. So, good and bad. But as we've touched on that aspect of Ozzy, now we're going to dive deeper into different aspects of Ozzy's music. And these are definitely all going to be much more uplifting and positive than kind of what we've highlighted so far.
Well, one of the things too I think of is obviously when he was drunk or on drugs, that's when all of the crazy stuff was going on.
It was most of the time.
Yeah, I'm sure the 70s and 80s were just a blur for Ozzy. And then you had the choking incident with Sharon,
Yeah.
and he didn't even remember it. And I think it's just like when he was on the drugs, he got all whacked out. And actually, one thing, as far as that goes, is the Randy Road years. He was only there for like basically a tour and a half. So the Diary of a Madman tour, they had to cancel the majority of the second half of the tour because Ozzy was just so nuts. And so you can see how, the drugs and the alcohol just like really disrupted him. But when he wasn't drinking or on drugs, everyone says he was just a big sweetheart. He was like the nicest guy.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. All right, so let's move on, and we're going to talk now about our top favorite songs, Ozzy songs. Apparently, I misunderstood what we were doing, but I got my top ones as well. Do you want to go first, or?
Yeah. So what we were gonna do is
mine are in no real order.
Yeah. So our top actually was going to be the top 6 favorite Ozzy solo songs, and mine also are not in any particular order.
Mm-hmm.
Desire from the No More Tears
I
album.
don't even remember that.
I don't think it was a single, but it rocks. It's Zach Wilde's on that one. Shot in the Dark on Ultimate Sin. I really like that song a lot. Jakey Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy Train. I think it was overplayed, but amazing solo by Randy Rhoads. Over the Mountain. Also another Randy Rhoads off of Diary of a Madman. No More Tears. Very epic sounding off of the No More Tears album. And I Don't Want to Stop off the Black Rain album. I like that one a lot too.
All right. Well, we do have some that the same. I have for me my favorite songs by Ozzy are "Flying High Again," "I Don't Know," "Bark at the Moon," "Shot in the Dark," and "Rock and Roll Rebel."
Yep.
And it was hard to just narrow it down because when I was at that point, I was just like, man, there could be like 5 or 6 other songs that I could have picked to just put into that spot because I also really liked Killer of Giants, and there was also I also liked Over the Mountain, and I almost put Over the Mountain on, but then I was gonna have to take something else off, and I wasn't about to put Crazy Train because if I hear that song again, I think my head's gonna explode. It's just so overplayed that I couldn't even consider putting that one on there, but
When you have a career that long, it's
it's
tough to
hard.
like narrow it down. So.
Right. And I do know that I dropped off listening to Ozzy, one, because his music kind of dropped off as the years went on as well. The quality just wasn't there. And so I know that after a certain point, I probably have not heard anything off his last 4 or 5 albums. That I can, and I don't feel like I'm missing out on too much by saying that. Definitely albums I would need to get around to listening to, but I don't think I've missed out on anything there.
Well, I like the Zach Wild albums the best, and we're going to be getting into that in a little bit.
Really?
But oh yeah, but the thing is too, what was interesting was one of his last albums, Scream, was with Gus G from Firewind, and I love Firewind. They're one of my favorite bands, and Firewind is like a power metal, very fast guitar riff, and so I was like really excited when I heard that he was going to be with Ozzy and record an album, and so that's what I was expecting him to bring that energy and fast guitar riffs to Ozzy's albums, and I thought it was going to be great. So that album, I Want to Hear You Scream, the first song, it rocks. But then after that, I think it was probably like the management told Gus, hey, we want to go back to the slower tempo Black Sabbath stuff. So the whole rest of that album was like slower songs, and I was kind of disappointed in that. So
Yeah. All right. So let us know what your favorite songs were by Ozzy. Now, these are all our solo ones. I also did Black Sabbath ones as well because sometimes, even though we write stuff down, we still forget. Uh, but what were your favorite Ozzy's? Drop us a line and let us know. So, for our next topic here, we're going to talk about our favorite guitar players that played with Ozzy in his solo career. So, once again, things kind of, maybe somebody wrote down the wrong idea of what we were supposed to be doing here this time. But in this in this exercise, we were only supposed to pick our top 4 favorite guitar players that played with Ozzy. So, um, Eric, why don't you go ahead and go and let us know who your 4 are?
all right, well, I got a little happy and wrote down all of the guitarists that played with Ozzy in chronological order. So that's the big nerd that I am. So, all right. So as I had mentioned a little earlier, uh, and it's tough because obviously he's had a lot of phenomenal musicians play with him over the years,
Agreed.
and so, but I'm gonna go with Zach because he's got the heaviest guitar tone, uh, fastest, heavy, crunchy riffs, and so that's why I picked him.
Mm-hmm.
And just second and third were tough to kind of pick and stuff. So just like they're really close to each other. But for the second favorite, it's going to be Jake. I like the songs overall better than on the Randy albums. The two Jake Elite albums had less ballads. I love Ultimate Sin and a lot of the songs on that album. And so, I mean, it's close. The Randy Rhoads albums had more ballads on it and slower songs, but obviously Randy's guitar solos are just phenomenal. And so that's going to be my order. All right, Andrew. So who are your favorite guitarists? How's
I was
that?
like, you almost forgot what we were talking about. Who cares? I got them all written down here too.
I was going to go down the
Yeah,
list.
I know. We're not doing that. All right. So for me, I have my thoughts are completely different than Eric's are altogether. Because for me, there is nobody else better than Randy Rhoads that played with Ozzy Osbourne. The talent that he had, you can hear his finger style, the classical nature that he was brought up on by his mom. Uh, that is reflected in everything he does in all of his solo work. And I just don't see any of the other guitar players that he played with that would be able to match up with him. He died too early for for him to really build a big history up with that, but that doesn't change about the quality and how great of a guitar player he was. I mean, coming out of Quiet Riot and then going straight over to Ozzy, it, for me, it's Randy Rhoads. Um, After Randy, I like Jakey Lee. I also like the way Bark of the Moon went. That was one of my favorite albums, and I just thought that the writing that Jake did on that, even though he got screwed out of it later on, is I thought that showed him a lot. I like Brad Gillis just because I thought Brad was kind of hardcore, even though he didn't do much with Ozzy. I just liked him being there, and I know that Zach was the next big name after that, and so that's where I put Zach. I mean, we've seen Zach Wild play. We've been to his shows as well, and I find that his solos tend to all sound the same to me. I don't hear a lot of variety in the way he plays, so that's why he's would be fourth for me out of those guys. It's
Mhm.
just the way it's now. I'm not going to go through all 16 guitar players that played with Ozzy because he went through a lot, especially later on in time. I mean, I think he really messed up after getting rid of, oh, what was their name? So,
But Zach,
Lee, because with the drummer Bob
Lee
Paisley,
Kerslake.
yeah, and Don Airy, getting rid of all the original lineup that he had, and he did that eventually. Every one of them ended up leaving the band, and I think that that's when you see a lot of the turnover and the music kind of really change. And for me, that first lineup was his best lineup as well. So that's for me, that's what I would be going with. So once again, let us know who you like. Did you have a favorite guitar player that played with Ozzy? Did we not mention the one that you wanted because I wouldn't let Eric list all 16 of them just to make a comment on all 16? Um, but if you have one that's different, or maybe you support one of ours, like all of mine, then go ahead and let us know. So now we are at the point where we're going to talk about a couple albums that we reviewed for that Ozzy Works was a part of, since this is our Ozzy tribute. And at first, we weren't exactly sure what to do, as Ozzy's put out at least what 16 solo albums and was on like about 7 Black Sabbath albums, or the first 5 to 7, whatever it is. I don't remember that number, but he was there for he has quite a few albums out. So what were we gonna do? We decided, you know what, we'll just pick the first Sabbath album and we'll pick his first solo album and we'll review those. We know that you guys have all been listening to this music forever and you're very familiar with both these albums, but how else were we gonna pick two different albums out of everything he did? So we'll start first with Black Sabbath. So, the Black Sabbath album, awesome album, ahead of its time when that came out. Very dark album. Once again, awesome album. Came out in 1970. Came out through Vertigo Records. It's done in one day. Those guys went in, recorded, got done. They played it live. They had Ozzy in one room. The band was in the other room, and they just played it and got it done. And Ozzy said, "This is the way all albums should be done." Why not? Because after like about 12 hours of playing, they went down to the bar and started drinking. So, what a good day! The album comes in just under 40 minutes. There are 8 songs on the album. The releases were a little different here in the United States and in England once again, but not much of a difference when it came to the songs. So the obviously this is the traditional lineup of Black Sabbath with Iommi, Bill Ward, Geezer Butler, and of course Ozzy Osbourne. Those are the members of the band at the time, and the first song, Black Sabbath. Wow, you go back and you listen to that song, and you can feel the darkness, the dreary, the way the sound, the drums are, and how slow it is. But it's just, even though it is such a slow song, it is a very powerful and strong song. Um, Great song. The Wizard. One of my favorite Black Sabbath songs. Matter of fact, when we were doing the favorite songs of Ozzy, I did three Black Sabbath, or I did the Black Sabbath songs as well. Black Sabbath and the Wizard and NIB both made my list. All three of those songs on this album. Um, I love the harmonica playing in the beginning. Cool sound. Ozzy did a great job on that. NIB, one of my favorites, and this is something I didn't know. Reading up on the album NIB and in Ozzy's autobiography, he states that even though everybody says that NIB stands for Nativity in Black, he denies that and says that that is not uh, what their intentions were. They called it NIB after Bill Ward's beard. The shape of it looked like a fountain pen nib, NIB. And apparently that is what the name of the song came from.
I heard that, yeah.
Not as cool as Nativity in Black. And, you know, it was in his autobiography, so you guys can all look it up and check it out. They did a remake song, Evil Woman, by this band called Crow from Minneapolis. And that was a dumb song. Didn't care for it. Matter of fact, I really didn't care for much of the songs on this album outside of Black Sabbath, The Wizard, and NIB. Warning was a pretty rocking song like that. I did like on Wicked World, the last song, the bass guitar runs I thought were pretty awesome as I was listening to that. It's a great album. So it's, you know, you're nitpicking something and it's their first album and it's in 1970. There's so many things that people that listen to music today that are much younger in their 20s don't understand about the sound that was going on back there with the lack of equipment that was available and that there wasn't all this digital recording and everything was raw and live and these musicians played these instruments. They recorded this all one time. They didn't go back and do all these backtracks on everything. It was just so to me, great album, great way to start off, and obviously that's why it's such a big album. I mean, I know when it came out, everybody hated it because of the sound of it. They were afraid of it.
It was different.
The evil. It was dark. It wasn't happy and peppy and everybody's gonna love me. No, it was hardcore heavy metal in your face, and what a great way to start off the career Ozzy and Black Sabbath.
Mhm.
Eric?
What's your rating on the album?
Oh, it's easily a 9.
Okay, wow, I can see that.
9.
I'm going to surprise you.
What, you liked it?
Yeah.
Of course you did.
So overall, I felt the album was a very interesting combination of several different styles. It contained the blues that they were playing in their earlier years, combined with the psychedelic rock from the late 1960s and early 1970s, along with more aggressive guitar playing from Tony Iommi. So I thought it was like a really cool kind of combination of all of those. I liked it despite not being as aggressive as the heavy metal that would come later on. And I'll tell you, for it being the birth of heavy metal, now I think most metal fans say that this is the album that started heavy metal. And so to change like hard rock and to raise it another level from hard rock to heavy metal, I'm giving this album a 10 just for being so different, so innovative.
It came out in 1970, so there wasn't a whole lot out there that sounded like this at all.
Deep Purple.
It wasn't this dark.
Yeah. And I feel the second album, Paranoid, moves further into what we know as traditional heavy metal, as Tony's guitar playing got more aggressive on the second album.
For the second album, disgusted. Second album was Blizzard of Oz. We decided to go with his first solo album, and Eric, why don't you go ahead and get us started on that one? And Ozzy. Ozzy.
Let's talk about Ozzy. All right, so Blizzard of Oz was released on September 12th, 1980. I really liked the first track, I Don't Know. Great guitar solo by Randy. I felt it was a perfect way to start an album with like a really strong song. I don't like ballads, but Ozzy has had a few that I don't mind over the years, and they typically have good lyrics. Goodbye to Romance, I thought was decent. I liked the lyrics. I liked the music on Suicide Solution. Mr. Crowley, I felt was a little slow for me. I felt the songs that rock are really good, but there's too many ballads and slow songs on the album. So I'm going to give it a 7.5.
You better not say that last sentence.
Crazy Train is what first piqued my interest into what I would call traditional heavy metal, but let's see. All right, I'll skip that part.
Thank you.
All right,
This
okay.
is an Ozzy episode.
Okay,
Ozzy. Okay, so
okay,
for me,
Andrew, what did you think of Blizzard of Oz?
I like the album. I thought it was a great album. When I listened to it, I haven't listened to it in a long time, and after listening to it, I can't mention why I don't listen to it more than I do, other than the fact that I can't stand Crazy Train anymore because it's been so overplayed that it's just a song I don't like. And I find that with a lot of the older albums, I listen to them so much and I don't want to ruin them that I put a lot of those down. And then with us doing this, I'm picking them back up and listening to them again. And it's nice to have it right there, but I'm not just picking them myself because I don't want to ruin the songs because this was a great album. I don't know, was one of my top songs that I picked. Crazy Train, once again, overplayed song. Otherwise, how do you beat that? It's just like it's like any other rock and roll anthem song, right?
Oh
It's
yeah,
I'm surprised people haven't remade it, and they probably haven't because out of just Randy Rhoads playing it so well. I'm with you. Goodbye to Romance. Ozzy stated that that was his farewell to Black Sabbath, and he wrote that song first for this album. It's the first song he wrote. He dedicated to him leaving Black Sabbath. Too Slow. I'd have been okay if it wasn't on there. That'd have been fine to me. D is a perfect example of the skill level of Randy Rhoads, a song that he wrote dedicated to his mom. Suicide Solution. Ozzy says the song was written about Bon Scott,
yeah.
right? Bob Daisley, who wrote it, said no. I wrote it about Ozzy. So, we believe Ozzy, or do we believe the guy that wrote the song?
Okay.
What are you gonna do there?
Right.
Right? I mean, after that, you got Crowley, Mr. Crowley. The soul at the end is awesome. I don't care that much about No Bone movies. I thought Revelation, Mother Earth was a little long, but there was a really good guitar part in that. And Steal Away the Night, I liked. I liked the tempo. I liked the bass runs. Um, Great album once again. I didn't hear what you said. You said that you gave this one a what?
7.5.
7.5, right? Um, I'm gonna go closer to. I'll like it as an 8. There's just a lot. There's the controversy with the album to begin with, and unfortunately, this kind of continued on later on with in Ozzy and his career. But this album started him screwing around his bandmates because when this album was first supposed to come out, it was supposed to be the Blizzard of Oz band,
And yeah.
and that was supposed to be on the album, and that's not what happened. And the rest of the band kind of let things go, and that was the end of it all, and that was the beginning of the badness because they shouldn't have done that by letting things go. Back in 2002, they went ahead and they remade all these songs, and they got rid of all the old people because of the lawsuits because they felt like they weren't getting paid for their credits, and
Well, they weren't.
that's clearly they weren't, and they've gone to court. Unfortunately, the courts did not support them. They didn't get anything for it. They supported Ozzy and Sharon's stupidity. And then they went ahead and remade the songs. And then once again, if you read Ozzy's autobiography, Sharon says Ozzy said to do it. Ozzy said I had nothing to do that this was all Sharon. I'm going to believe Ozzy in this case because it seems to fit her MO in what all happened. But getting back to this album itself, great album, actually great start album. Love Randy Rhoads, love everything that Randy Rhoads was a part of and that he did. And it's unfortunate that we didn't get more out of him because the talented guitar player he was, that's for sure.
Very much, yeah.
Yeah.
You want me to start off?
No. Okay, so now we're here for our That's Debatable topics. And I think there is no way that we cannot talk about Ozzy without talking about Sharon. And so the first topic is Sharon just a crazy bitch or was she a savvy manager? Eric.
All right. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like, just like he said, or, did she save Ozzy's life and all that? Or, was she a ruthless business person? I'm going to say a little bit of both. And so after Ozzy left, Black Sabbath was fired. He took his money. He was going to go to California and destroy himself for 3 months.
Yep.
And then he said he was going to go back to England and start collecting unemployment. And so, who knows what would happen in California? Don Arden, who was Sharon's
Sharon's dad.
dad, was
Yep.
managing Black Sabbath. He sent her to America to keep an eye on Ozzy so he
Yep.
wouldn't kill himself because he was planning on signing Ozzy to a solo deal. And that's when they fell in love and all that stuff. So I think she was instrumental for him still being alive and also keep kicking him back into the studio and recording all of those albums and stuff. So it's like, so I think definitely she, was a big part of his success. But then also, just like you mentioned, there's other stories like the Jakey Lee one, and I read this on Jakey Lee, and it just made me sick. So Jakey Lee was in an early version of Rat and an early version of Rough Cut, and so he still hadn't made it. And so they brought him in. He wrote the songs, played on the record, and then after they recorded the album, that's when Sharon gave him the contract and said, "You're going to give up all your rights in the songs, and if you don't sign the contract, we're going to fire you from the band and we'll just get somebody else in." And also in the contract, it said you can't talk about this either. So he was just a young guy, young musician. He thought it was this big opportunity. So what's he going to do? So he signed it. That's crappy. I mean,
It is.
that's rotten. So I'm going to say a little bit of both. She was mean and nasty, and also I don't think Ozzy would be alive and have the career he had without her.
I have a more of a harsher take on it than Eric does. I guess there's two ways you can look at it. If you're one of those people that says, "Do your business, think about yourself, and fuck everybody else." Sorry, that's the second time I did this tonight. Um, then pick her. I couldn't do the things she did. I wouldn't do the things she did. There is no way that by giving the other musicians credit that Ozzy would have suffered financially to the in any. I mean, he is worth dollars. He had more than enough to share. He did, and he wouldn't have gotten to where he was if they hadn't have helped him. He's a singer, right? He can't play the instruments. He's never played the instruments, so he needs people helping him. And so they deserve it, especially if they were the ones writing the music, especially if they were the ones writing the songs. Yeah, Ozzy would have been carrying them, but you know what? They helped make you what you were. You should have taken care of them, and instead, at every opportunity, you gave them the big middle finger and said, "Screw you guys. I don't care what you've done. You did great musicianship. You great lyricists. You did great to get my career rolling. And you know what? I'm going to kick you to the curb because I'm just going because I can, right? I mean, that's basically it. I'm going to re-record everything, and boom, you're gone. I can't do business like that. I can't deal with people that are that way because when you're going to know they're going to do it to you, right?
Right.
It means you can't trust that person. So for me, can't trust Sharon. Don't want to have anything to do with her, whether she is the reason he made his hundreds of millions or not. That's not the way to do things. Ozzy was going to make his money no matter what, even if he just stopped in Black Sabbath. Those first few albums were going to carry him for the rest of his life as it was, right? So yeah, bitch.
Well, the other thing too is you don't know what could have happened. I mean, he maybe would have gone to America, destroyed himself for 3 months, gone back to England. Maybe somebody else would have invited him to a new band. I mean,
Right, you can't see anybody who grew up the way he grew up, then went through Black Sabbath like he did, not continuing on sometime in music, even if it wasn't right away, even if it was a few years down the road. There's no way that can have that significant impact on your life, and you just walk right away from that.
yeah, I mean, maybe he didn't think he had a future, but like I said, maybe somebody else would have reached out to him and brought him
But I
into
know.
the band. Yeah.
So let us know what you think. What did you feel about Sharon? So our next topic is going to be which did you prefer? Did you prefer Black Sabbath or do you prefer Ozzy? So I'll start with this one. And to me, it's Black Sabbath. I think the Black Sabbath albums are better albums. I think it shows that Ozzy isn't just somebody who can be out there by himself. Extremely successful when he was with Black Sabbath, and it was a Bill Ward, I believe, that wrote most of the songs, most of the lyrics to the songs. You got Iommi, with his part in the guitar part, and together as a band, I thought they were awesome. And when he went off on his own, once again, he can't play the instruments. He needs good people, and he got good people lined up all around him. I mean, he got a good drummer, he got a good bass player, and he got a good, great, awesome guitar player. And they made great songs together. But all through his career, when it was Ozzy, it was these other people writing stuff, but not getting credit for writing it. So they did not get the recognition. So how much was truly just Ozzy himself, and how much was Ozzy with the band, which is why I think his first albums were better. And I think as later on, when he went on the solo career, they got worse because you start doing this to people, people aren't going to come want to play with you because this is how you're treating them if they
Right.
come over. So that was another part of it. But I just thought the whole writing, the sound, especially what Black Sabbath brought to the table, and once again, that first song, Black Sabbath, on title track, and that you can feel it, and
Yeah.
that tells you right there. So for me, I went with I think the Black Sabbath was better than the Ozzy. What do you think?
All right. Well, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I'm all about like fast, crunchy guitar riffs, and for that reason, I'm going to go with Ozzy's solo career. You get the flashy solos of Randy Rhoads and Jakey Lee, and you've got the fast, crunchy riffs from Zakk Wylde. That's my thing, and so definitely between the two, I'm going with Ozzy's solo career. Obviously, Black Sabbath is much loved and have a ton of fans, but that's just my taste.
That's too bad. Okay. And so for our last topic, I don't remember this being it. So
Well,
what
actually,
did you put on there? Did you make this up and I don't know that's why
yeah,
I
no, we only came up with two, and so it's like I was just thinking of something that was on my mind. So I obviously I was a kid when Randy Rhoads died, and
and he's
so
20 years older than me, so I was just born.
right. And so then when Ozzy passed away, I started thinking about all of Randy Rhoads' incredible guitar solos on those first two albums and stuff, and I started thinking, what would have happened if Randy Rhoads wouldn't have died? And that dumb crazy pilot, wouldn't have like ended him and basically all of these fans that he had and stuff. What would have happened if Randy would have continued? How would have Ozzy's career been different?
And you
Uh,
said you thought about it, so what you come up with?
well, the interesting thing is,
Because I just found out about this, so
okay, so
right.
I'll talk while you're thinking. So obviously there wouldn't be Brad Gillis and Jakey Lee and probably no
Well,
Zakk Wylde and stuff.
maybe.
I think that obviously it would have continued in that similar vein, obviously as Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman and stuff. And as I kept thinking about it, I was actually got really disappointed because we lost what could have been. And that's the thing that like really bothered me is that it's like Randy could have just had this amazing, incredible, long career. Making dozens of albums with Ozzy. Like I said, maybe they wouldn't have 16 different guitar players in the band, and it would have been Randy this whole way through. So I think it would have followed that along that style, and maybe the albums even would have gotten better. So
So I don't know about all that, because you just never know what's going to happen.
yeah,
And I would hope that if Randy had stuck around and kept making the albums that they were making, that credit would have been given to everybody, and everybody would have got recognized for their part. And if it was going to continue down the way it was, that the band should have been able to stand up and demand that Ozzy gives them that credit. Now, the thing I see is that with the fact that they're already fighting on the first album because of the way it came out, that makes me think that all you got to do is look at all these different bands that break up, and because of the inner the fighting going on, because people are not getting their credits or they're getting too screwed up that they can't make it to shows or play concerts or whatever the fact is. When you start creating that tension in the band, that starts to become a problem. And so to say to know that started on the first one and Ozzy didn't do them right kind of makes me wonder. I think if Randy had survived, I agree. I don't think I would have thought he would have lived long career, and I would have hoped that they could have worked things out. And if that had been the case, I truly believe that we wouldn't have seen all these guitar players. That we would have just seen Randy play out, maybe even to the end. You never know, and maybe even now that Ozzy's passed, we could have still been hearing Randy Rhoads play because he would have still had it in him to continue on. If he would have been that young.
Yeah, I mean, how cool would have it been if like he would have showed up at that last Black Sabbath concert and did some songs,
or that last Ozzy show.
Yeah,
right, in England that they put on. But unfortunately, that's what happens when you give rich people drugs, alcohol, and money, and then they start doing stupid shit, and then next thing you know, you lose a very talented, no question, one of the greatest talents that just didn't get to be out there just on the way he was brought up and trained. So I think it would have been definitely different. I think it would have been better. I think it would have been more, the music style would have stayed more along the lines of the first two albums, because I think that, as you talked about earlier, that Jakey Lee really was Bark at the Moon.
Yeah.
And after that, when Zakk Wylde came in, even those sounds were different too, because Zakk does have that heavier sound to him. So it would have changed the way those rest of the albums were written and sounded, because those guys just don't sound like, they got their own style. So who knows? It's unfortunate we're never going to get to find out. But we did get a cute couple of albums out of them, and there is some video out there, if you're not aware of that, of those guys playing together that you can see. Some studio stuff, and I'm sure there's concerts out there, but I have seen a lot of studio videos, so you guys got to check that out. If you're not familiar with Randy Rhoads and his contributions and the talent that man had, you got to check that out. He was taken to us way, way too early.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I threw this question in last, is because when Ozzy passed away, I just kind of thought that, I went back to Randy and I thought, man, it's like, what a disappointment, what we could have had.
Agreed.
All of these years.
So let us know what you think about Ozzy, the band, his time with Black Sabbath by himself. Did you like Ozzy? Did you not like Ozzy? Either way, let us know if that was the case. What'd you think of Randy Rhoads? Are you familiar with him? If not, check out his music. Check out these albums. Ozzy put a lot out. There's no way that you can listen to metal music and not have listened to Black Sabbath albums and not listen to at least some Ozzy albums, because he was just too important to the heavy metal world. I mean, who else? We only have one, Prince of Darkness.
That's right.
Right? Why are there bubbles all over the place, Sharon? I'm the Prince of fucking Darkness. I mean, and that's a really bad English accent, so sorry, Ozzy, but that's what I was going for. And if you don't know that reference, look it up, because it's out there. Him bitching to Sharon about why there's bubbles playing or shooting out of his sound check when he's out there. So anyway, check everything out. Let us know what you see, think, and feel. We're going to get back to our regular routine after this. So we'll have, I believe, the albums we got coming up later on. There's going to be Death Angels,
The Ultraviolets,
and then Steve Stevens'
Atomic Playlist. Yep.
So look for that. Drop us a line. Like and follow. Let us know what you think. Comment. And until then, rock on
and stay metal.
Artlist.io Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io